All right, and as we move on tonight, we do have some new information in the trial of a police officer involved in the night Breonna Taylor was shot and killed. The jury has given a partial verdict now of not guilty on count 2 of the federal charges against former Detective Brett Hankison, accused of violating the civil rights of Breonna Taylor's 3 neighbors living adjacent to Taylor's Louisville apartment, which was raided in 2020. The jury is still deadlocked on count 1. That deals with Breonna Taylor's civil rights. ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer, a perfect person to have with us tonight to let's sort through this. The verdict we have, we'll start with that. Why do you think the jury came to the conclusion of not guilty on that count?
So, Phil, I think it comes down to there being 2 different issues here, and I think you highlighted it very well. The second count being the deprivation of civil rights for the neighbors that Brett Hankison is accused of shooting through Breonna Taylor's glass window that was covered so he couldn't see any objects or people behind that. And the bullet's not hitting Breonna Taylor, but going through her apartment and then into the neighboring apartment. The jury has obviously come to the conclusion that Brett Hankison is not guilty of violating those people's rights in the other apartment, perhaps because he had no idea that anyone was in there. But when it comes to shooting into the apartment that he did know that people were in there, it seems like if we look back at one of the earlier questions that the jury had as to whether or not a person can violate someone's rights if they're not living in that room, that's something that the jury is still deliberating and struggling with, that they're hung on, or at least still deliberating on, as to the violations of Breonna Taylor's rights.
Yeah, and I'm wondering what you think could be holding them up on that count. I mean, you can't get in the mind of a jury, but what do you think is going on in there?
What I would guess, and again, this is just reading the tea leaves, both from the way they've been able to distinguish between the neighbors and Breonna Taylor, because they've already given us a verdict as it applies to the neighbors, but also, again, going back to that question of, can you deprive someone of civil rights if they're no longer alive? Don't forget that Brett Hankison, his bullet never hit Breonna Taylor. I believe that they're looking at it from the sense of when the other officers shot into the home, was Brett Hankison shooting at a home where Breonna Taylor was already dead, therefore her rights could not have been violated by Brett Hankison, or was she still alive? It's almost near impossible to be able to say when a person died within split seconds of a bullet being firing through that home. And I think that's the difficulty in the back and forth in this case. Maybe the jury comes back and says, you know what, we'll kind of quote unquote split the baby, not guilty on one, guilty on the other, or maybe they'll just go not guilty on both.
All right, Brian Buckmeyer, thanks for taking us through it tonight. Complicated case. Appreciate it.